Salute to you people and welcome to another episode of Numbers Off the Hook. Today we're going to talk about division. So please grab your notepad and your pen and let's do this. So basically when we do division, there's two different ways of writing it. One way is like this, A divided by B, or we write it as A over B. Okay? A here is called the numerator. Okay, we talked about this before, guys. B is called the denominator. Okay, and together they become the quotient. Okay, guys. So how can we understand division? You know, how can we get some kind of intuition? I want you guys to think of it this way. Division is the opposite of multiplication. Okay? I'm going to explain what I mean by that. But division as the opposite of multiplication. This is going to turn out to be a very good thing because we studied really hard about multiplication. So a lot of things that we learn about multiplication, we can use it for division. But let me show you guys what I mean. Let's take an example. Let's take 25 divided by 5. Okay? Here, 25 is the numerator, right? 5 here is the denominator. And when we calculate this, we get 5. So 5 here is the quotient. Okay. So what does it mean really? 25 divided by 5 is equal to 5. Well, if we look here, if we go the opposite way, we see that 5 multiplied with 5 is equal to 25. Another example here is, let's take 12 divided by 4. Okay? Here the numerator is 12, the denominator is 4, and the quotient is equal to 3. And we see here again that 12 divided by 4 is 3. At the same time, if we go backwards, we see that we have 3 multiplied with 4 is equal to 12. So that's when we can see that there's a very close relationship between division and multiplication, right guys? Now, when we did multiplication, we had to see very carefully how do we deal with 0. Now we're going to do the same thing with division. So we're going to examine two things. One is, we take a number, A, and we divide it by 0. So here we have that the denominator is equal to 0. Now, this is something we have to learn, and it's very important. This is not allowed. Not allowed, guys. It is not allowed to divide with 0. It is never allowed. Or sometimes they can say it's not defined. Same thing. Mathematicians sometimes, when they want to say that something is not allowed, they can also say it's not defined. Okay? So that's the rule. The rule is that the denominator should never be 0. Super, super important rule. Guys, please pay attention to this. The second rule, when we're dealing with 0, right? We're dealing with 0 now. Is, let's say we have any number, but now the numerator is 0 and we divide it by A. Okay? A is an n number except 0, right? So what happens here? Then this is always equal to 0. Okay, this is the second rule. And it's quite obvious when you think about it, that if a is a number that is not equal to 0, then 0 divided by a is always going to be equal to 0. Why? Let's use this opposite thing again. Because we know that taking 0 and multiplying it with any number, it has to be equal to 0. So the next step now is, how do we deal with division between positive and negative numbers, right? So let's look at the cheat code. If you remember, we had a cheat code for the multiplication. Now we're going to get the cheat code for division. So a here is the numerator, b is the denominator, and this thing together is, this is the quotient, right? So the cheat code is like this. If a is positive and if b is positive, then a divided by b is going to be positive. Okay. Next is, if a is positive, b is negative, a divided by b is going to be negative. Third is, if a is negative and b is positive, the other way around, we're still gonna get a divided by b is negative. And lastly, if both a and b are negative, then a divided by b is gonna be positive. So this is the cheat code for division. And what's really funny here, this is typical thing in mathematics, this kind of symmetry, right? Is that the cheat code for division and the cheat code for multiplication looks exactly the same way. Okay? Plus, 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 plus minus gives minus, minus plus gives minus, minus minus gives plus. Okay? So it's quite easy to remember. If you know one of them, you already know the other. But now, nevertheless, let's do some examples. Okay, so here we have 4 examples, okay? So we're gonna do them step by step. Now, 5 is a positive number, 10 is a positive number. So we have 5 over 10, a is a positive, right? 5, and b is positive, that's the 10. So the result is gonna be positive. And we know that 5 over 10, it can be written as a half. Okay, that's the simplest form. Here we have 2 divided by 1 is 2, right? But now we're going to look at the sign here. We have that 2 is the a, is positive. We have the b here is minus 1, is negative. So the result should be negative. So we have to put a minus sign here. So 2 divided by minus 1 is equal to minus 2. Okay? And we can always check. We can always go the other way around to check, because we know that minus 2 multiplied with minus 1 is equal to 2. Okay? Next one is, we have minus 4 here. And we have minus 8. So minus 4 is a, it's a negative number, and minus 8 is b, it's a negative number. So the result should be positive, so we don't have to write anything here in front. And 4 divided by 8, again, it can be written as a half. Okay. Lastly, we have this one, which is minus 5 divided by 10. Here we have a is negative, b is a positive number, so the result should be a negative number. So we have minus 5 over 10. But this can be simplified to minus a half again. So the last step is, how do we deal when we are dividing rational numbers with each other? And here, the trick is the following. division, okay, division is the same thing as multiplication, multiplying with reciprocal. There it comes in. Division is the same as multiplying with reciprocal. That's the trick. That's how we deal with rational numbers. So let's do an example, guys. So here we have minus 1/3, and we're going to divide it with 2/3. Okay? So the first thing I want to do is to transform this division into a multiplication. But what I have to do now is I'll just carry this part over, okay? That's minus 1/3. That doesn't change at all. And now, instead of writing a division here, I'm going to write a multiplication, okay? But I'm not done yet. Now, I need to, instead of putting this number, I have to put the reciprocal. And we talked about that. Reciprocal for rational numbers, it's about flipping, right? So we have to flip here. 3 divided by 2. Okay? So again, this part just carried over, and here, this division, instead of writing division, we wanted to do multiplication, because that's easier. But if we're going to multiply, we have to take the reciprocal, which is flipping the numerator and the denominator. So that's what we did. Okay. Now we see here, let's use the cheat code. This is a negative number, minus 1/3. This is a positive number, that's 3/2. So we know that this product is going to become a negative number. So we're going to keep that negative number here on the outside. And then we make a line. And now we can multiply the numerators. Now it's just a multiplication, right? That's 1 times 3. And the denominators, that's 3 times 2. And this can be simplified to minus, this minus sign carry over, 3 divided by 6, which is equal to -1/2. That's the final answer. Here, we see that we're taking a negative number and we're dividing it with a negative number. Okay? So we know that the quotient is going to be positive. Right? So we can write this as 1/4 divided by 1/2. Okay? So basically this minus and this minus, they cancel each other out. That was in the cheat code, if you remember. Now we have this. Now we're dividing with a rational number. So this, we're going to flip it and make this into a multiplication. So we write 1/4 and we multiply with the reciprocal. That's flipping, right? And now it's easy. Now we can just multiply the numerators, 1 times 2, and divide it by the denominators, 4 times 1. And that's equal to 2 divided by 4, which is equal to 1/2. Okay guys, so today we talked about the division, right? So we learned that there's 2 different ways of writing division. We talked about that there's a numerator, denominator, and the whole thing is called the quotient, right? We also learned that actually division is somehow the opposite to multiplication, right? And then we talked about how to deal with 0. And we saw that if the 0 is on top, then the result is always 0. So 0 divided by anything is always equal to 0. But if we have a 0 at the bottom, if the denominator is 0, that is not allowed. And I want you guys to remember that. In mathematicians, we say it's not defined. Division by 0 is not defined. Please remember that. Okay? Then we developed a cheat code for how to divide positive and negative numbers with each other. And we saw that the cheat code for divisions looks exactly the same way as it looks for multiplication. Right? Finally, we saw how to deal with rational numbers, how to divide rational numbers. And then the trick was, when we divide with the rational numbers, instead we can multiply with its reciprocal. So guys, I know it's getting difficult, it's getting more and more things to do, so I want you guys to practice really hard. Do a lot of problem sets. And if you have any questions on what we discuss, just write your questions in the comment sections and I will try to answer them as soon as possible. So I hope you enjoyed this video, or more importantly, I hope you learned something. And I see you at the next one. Have a nice one.